Welcome to the Mastermind Owls podcast, where we help entrepreneurs, digital content creators grow their online presence. I'm your host, Creative, and in this episode, we'll be diving into how to grow your brand for 2024. Join us as we explore tactics, emerging trends, critical insights, and how do you grow your brand in this upcoming year. If you haven't done so, go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. I am so excited for today's show. I have a special guest with me here today. Kaylan Sliney is going to be joining us here live throughout the show. Kaylan, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm so glad to be here. I'm doing great, thanks. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. It is so great to have you up here. This topic is probably one of your sweet spots as we talk about branding and marketing. You are a CEO, you're a thought leader, you've been in the industry, you're an NFT NYC speaker. So branding, I know, is something very important to you, and you work with a lot of people that have really strong brands and organizations. So super excited to get your intake on today's topic.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm really pumped about it. This is a great conversation and really timely for heading into the new year. I know a lot of people are reconfiguring their plans of attack and their strategies, so this is great.
Now, I am super excited to talk about branding. I've been in the marketing for about 10 years, and my main focus has been working around organizations, helping them scale, create an online presence. But now I'm really started getting into the personal branding. And I'm seeing that it's such a be a decision factor of why people are getting jobs, how people are raising their awareness, how they're able to sell their product and their services. And the landscape of where we at in 2023 has dramatically changed as businesses are now looking for influencers, people that have a voice to really amplify their business, but also make them thought leaders. Throughout this, we've seen the word branding really change. From my perspective, when I got into branding, and maybe I don't know how long you guys been in the branding, but when I first came in, branding was just like a logo, was just the colors, was just a theme, right? But over time, branding has really changed with the digital world. Now, branding is more customized, customer service, website development, and it's getting amplifying more and more. So how as us as content creators that are in this space, as business entrepreneurs that are in the space, young CEOs or young leaders that are trying to scale and get more opportunities, I think branding is something that's going to be extremely important as we head into 2024. Kaylan, what are some of your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is so timely. I often call myself the most reluctant consumer. And consumers are getting more and more sophisticated in the digital age. They see through transparency, they see through marketing ploys and plays. So you do really have to create, as you're saying, branding is so much more about the colors and the logos now. I mean, it's an ethos, it is an opinion, it is taking a position on the world the consumer wants to align themselves with. So there's a lot more depth to it than ever. And I think that makes it really exciting because it doesn't feel so salesy, so used car salesman-y, if you will. But that does mean it takes a lot more, you know, inner reflection, whether you're a brand or a creator as an individual brand. You do have to be so much more thoughtful about the messaging that you're transmitting, how you stand out, and what you want folks to resonate with when they think of you.
You nailed it. And today we're really going to be focusing on kind of what are the three pillars for you to focus on in 2024. We've got some great creators that are already in here. So shout out to some of you guys in here that are have decided to join today's podcast. And I'm also excited to turn the mic over to you guys here in a little bit to hear some of your expert insights. But first, we're going to get over and talk about some of the three pillars that I want you guys to really start thinking about. And for me, this was really a big change when I really started, like I told you guys about branding. It wasn't until I got hired to help an organization, and this organization was a sub multi-million dollar organization, but they were looking to rebrand. And at the time, when they said rebranding, I thought, okay, maybe they need a new website. Maybe they need some new headshots, right? But there was so much more to the rebranding that had to be done and really thought of. And what I'm going to share with you guys is three of the things that we really focused on. Now, this organization that I help support not only grew from a sub multi-million, but to a multi-million dollar organization, ended up getting sold out. And a lot of it had to do with their rebranding. They already were doing some kick-ass work in the industry. They were already kicking ass, but what they needed to do is kind of fine tune how the reputation was out there. And for me, I really didn't understand branding, I guess I can say. But it's really your identity. What are people saying behind your back when you're not around? When you're not in a space and people bring up Creative Owls or someone else's name, what are they saying? Are they saying good and positive things? What are you, it's like your reviews, right? If you guys ever been to a restaurant, you usually check the reviews, or before you buy anything on Amazon, you're trying to figure out what that brand is all about. Do they have good products? Do they not? And is that brand or that organization doing a good job storytelling, telling people and connecting with people? And I feel like that has been the way that I've seen organizations or people have really scaled their visibility and be able to not only make money, but also network and have great opportunities for that. So branding and marketing is a really sensitive topic where a lot of times people that don't understand it get it confused, but they are two different things. So I just want to explain real quick what is branding. From my perspective, everybody has different perspective, but branding is identity and a story of a company that makes it stand out from competitors that sell similar product or services. The goal of branding is to earn a space in the minds of target audience to become the preferred option when doing business. Now, this is a really crucial a way of putting it out there, but everybody has their own perspective of branding because everybody here has a different way of how they do business. Kaylan, what are your thoughts on what is branding so far?
I totally agree with you. I think that I would add a sort of practical nuance to it in that in the digital age where we are flooded with choice, the switching costs for consumers have dropped to virtually zero, right? We get bombarded with ads digitally all day long in every channel, all over our phone, all over our feeds. And where the space is just so crowded and it's easier than ever to start a brand, it's just as easy, if not easier, to switch brands. So if you are a brand or you're a creator, you do have to create that story that, resonates with people and keeps them in your orbit. Because if you are away luggage, for example, that spawned that new sort of travel industry, that new chic, sleek DTC suitcase company a couple of years ago has spawned infinite competitors and copycats who may do it, cheaper, may be more accessible, may have a brick and mortar. All of those competitive advantages can go away in the blink of an eye when somebody decides to hop in and copy you. So your branding is what keeps people interested in your story. And like we were saying earlier, identifying with a world that they want to see, however they feel about themselves and their worldview, is what they need you to resonate with in order to stick with you.
And there's some brands that like I would only rock or I would only wear, and that's because they've done a good job keeping me in their life cycle, telling a story that connects with me. And I think as entrepreneurs, content creators, NFT artists, influencers that are here or that are listening on the podcast, I think the thing that I want everybody to focus on is it building to connect, right? I think that or build to connect. There you go. I think that is something for us to think about as we're building a brand. How can I create something that's going to resonate with somebody, to tell a story, but tell a story to the right person? So let's actually dive into the three pillars that I think we should all really focus on 2023. Now, each one of these are very important. And as you guys are starting out your business or starting your entrepreneurship, it's really crucial to understand these three things and to not slack on any of them because they really make a difference. So the first one is going to be brand strategy. Define who you are, right? Who should care about your brand? and who's the brand for? I think those are three things for you guys to really think about as you guys are coming out in 2024. And you guys might have been all over the place, but the more defined, the more clarity that you get on the brand, the more it's easier going to be for you to do a lot of things that we're going to talk about here in the future around strategy, marketing, and identity. But having a really clear understanding of your strategy really takes the initiative and lays the foundation in the very beginning. Kaylan, what are your thoughts on that?
Uh, Fully agree. And there's a strategist and typographer, and he's done all kinds of things. But a guy named Chris Do, talks about reducing your personal brand or your brand into a two-word identifier, right? Like, what's your two-word brand? And the reason you do this is because I love the analogy he uses. Your life story, whether it's you as an individual or a brand, your story is like the internet. It is vast, it is sprawling, and it goes all over the place. But when you can take take a position and create a lens through which you tell your stories, the ones that are most relevant will sort of emerge, and they fill out that brand story. And so you have a perspective, you have a lens, you have a way to connect with people once you've selected your own branding, and you can distill it down super, super tight into two words. That then becomes what you would equate with Google, right? It's like that's your search engine, and everything can get filtered through that. It's almost a shortcut to learning how to tell your story once you have been able to identify with and connect with what your brand is. That takes a lot of work. I think that's actually the hardest part, is figuring out what your brand is and being able to be so tight and efficient with it that it's down to two words, right? And then once you have that, once you've said, this is who I am, and this is the position that I take, or this is what I represent in the world, now your storytelling becomes naturally consistent. And so you sort of evolve and fulfill that brand narrative without really having to do a lot of construction that can often come off as artificial or ring as hollow. So that's sort of the color that I would add there, and think it's an interesting challenge for people to take on. In Can you define your personal brand in two words? It's harder than you think, and it seems like, how can everybody have unique identifiers in a two-word statement? But it's possible, and it just takes a lot of work to really, really hone in. But once you can do that, you've created this whole, you've kind of paved the road for yourself.
I think having the initiative step is as like a content creator or someone that has like an NFT project, or I have a business. Sometimes I'm like, what should I create? What type of post should I create? Right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And you always kind of go back as like, should I just do GM, or should I create a blog article, or, but what type of article should I create, or, and maybe you start looking at other people and you start getting
Oh, I have
influenced by
so
other
many
people.
opinions on that. I'll hold them for now, but yes, of course
And
it
and
happens.
and what happens is that you really kind of steer away from your brand.
Yep.
And the and it happens to me all the time, where I'm seeing like squirrel and I'm like, oh shit, and I forget about what I'm creating. But then when I home back of like, when I have my clear head, done with my exercise, and I'm home and I'm at my right pad, I'm like, man, go back to my mission, my strategy of like, what am I really here for? What am I really creating? And then from there, it just makes it easier to generate content. And the content is really good. Then the content is really on brand with what you're talking about.
That's it. You've got to know your brand and stick to your brand. But I will say, just to put a finer point on that, I think one of the old style growth hacks on Twitter that was bouncing around during 2023 quite a bit, probably 22 as well, was, like, stick to no more than three things. It was like, if you like horseback riding, running, and baking, like those are your things, and that's all you're allowed to talk about. Or if you're a parent and a teacher and you're interested in, populating apples, whatever it is, they gave you these old school advice of like, pick three things, do not go beyond those bounds, because that is your brand and that's what people know. But I think we are, as multidimensional people, when you're an individual brand, you should be able to talk about just about anything that feels authentic to you. However, if you do it through the lens of this is my brand, right? Like this is my 2 word distilled brand, or this is the lens that I put on everything, you'll find consistency and your silver thread in a different way that doesn't limit your topics. I think limiting your topics that you can or do talk about can feel like a bit of a prison, and you're going to end up banging your head against the wall being like, what do I talk about today? I don't have anything with, horses or apples or baking today that's going on in my life, but I want to engage with my audience. You can do that if you've taken a position rather than created, silos. So I think that's another way to look at it, is going forward, think about how can you filter your everyday experiences through your unique lens so that your narrative remains consistent without being boxed into categorical discussions.
Oh, this is butter. This sounds so amazing. This is why I connected with you and I wanted to reach out with you. And we also have a lot of great guests that are going to come up here and share their knowledge here in a little bit. But you are really like you are nailing it. I'm so happy I got the right person here.
So
So we
kind of
talked
you.
about brand strategy. Now I've got two more that I really want to hit on. And after we do all three, I'm going to give you guys a cheat code after we talk about all these three of what you need to do to really take it to the next level. I want you to maybe talk about brand identity, because when people talk about brand identity, it's here's my logo, right? and for me, I thought that's what it was, brand identity, my colors. But I think there's a little bit more to that. And I want to kind of lean on you to maybe help answer some other things, some other ways that we can start thinking about brand identity.
Yeah, sure. I think that there's voice. That's a big one. Brand identity translates often digitally. And so, when you go to a website and you get a 404 error, here's a decent example, right? There are some folks that get creative with it and they put a little T-Rex who like can't reach a computer or whatever it is, right? They're cheeky or they are super sophisticated and they match or they intentionally mismatch typefaces. Those visual elements are not just logo and colors, but they do have a lot to do with a digital translation. Voice is really, really big. What kind of vocabulary do you use? Are you witty? Are you sassy? Are you, do you use Arial font only and, dictionary words at exactly a ninth grade reading level? Those sorts of things are nuances that I think it's worth paying attention to, because that again forms layers of consistency across your channels. Do you,
I'm gonna.
go ahead, please.
Oh, I want to add to that. I think it's overall it really helps the communication,
Absolutely.
right? Having the visuals, the right colors, and the right colors are what is in your target audience range group, right? Or the right font, right? If our target audience is kids, obviously we're going to use a lot of different colors,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we're going to make the font at a certain way, right? But if my target audience is older, I'm going to be make sure that I use the right colors, and I'm going to be using big fonts for them to read for accessibility, and that really takes a presence when you start thinking psychological in your brain. What color should I choose? Here's a fun statistic for you. 70% of companies use the color blue.
Blue. And yes, exactly. I mean, we went through this.
70%.
We went
So
through
that
this
lets
in
you know.
studying for, figuring out what we were going to do for magnetic. And I was like, oh, this is so boring. I do have
Yeah.
I
So
want to let you finish, but
go ahead.
I have a counterpoint on this exact item. But please go ahead.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is that you really have to really think about your identity before you start. You can't just throw up a PFP or throw up an owl and just be like, yo, this is it. This is my identity. There's more to it. And I think what we're trying to do is bring more awareness to it. So as you are going into 2024 as a content creator, as an entrepreneur, because it's the new year, it's a perfect time to start implementing that, to start creating something new and to put yourself out there in a different vibe or if a different theme that you did before because you want to make better decisions to grow.
I mean, it is. It's a perfect time. I just sent a sort of recap and manifesto, if you will, to our internal team yesterday as an end of 2023. And I was saying in it, I think that, very little of this this tide shift or sea change that's happening has anything to do with numbers on a calendar. But symbolically, it can be a great time to, leverage that newness and people's renewed attention and investment and, creative well springs to just say, sure, it's a new year. Does that matter, to my brand? No. Does it matter to, the economy? Yes and no. But here is this arbitrary marker, and I'm going to use that as a springboard to say it's time for me to sit down, evaluate, reevaluate, refine, and what have you. But the one thing that I was going to say about, colors and fonts and branding, it's James Victoria who says often the right answer is the wrongest answer. He's also a typographer and an artist. And he was talking about doing all of these book jackets with completely unexpected, like it's a World War II, it's a book about World War II. Maybe I'm going to use a thin, fine script font or something that, not the Gothic century fonts that you'd expect. It depends on your brand as well. Like maybe your brand is contrarianism. Maybe you go against the grain. And so I would be thoughtful, not just about your audience, be more concerned with who you are first. And then you'll find your audience. Like maybe you do want to reach this certain crowd, but forever and ever, amen, that's going to be work for you. You're going to have to think about what do they want. If instead you're putting out what really resonates with you, you will find your pre-populated domains.
You're back. You're
Sorry
back.
about that. Yeah, it may take a little longer to find when you're starting with something that's not predefined, like horse enthusiasts, right? You're actually just saying, what's most authentic to me is this wild and weird combination of features, and I will find my people. And then you don't have to think so much about content. Then, again, it's upfront work, but then everything that comes out of you is organic and reaching people in a way where they've opted in rather than trying to satisfy them or think about what do they want to hear from me. Because there are people a dime a dozen who are already catering to what they think that group wants. So figure out what you want first. And if that's weird fonts and wild colors, then great. You'll find the people that love that and think, oh, this is it takes me a little longer to read because that wasn't the clearest sentence, but it was artistic and I'm here for that. It's like the fewer people who love it that much more. And if it's for everybody, it's for nobody.
Casey Neistat used to say, if you're doing what everybody else is doing, you're doing it wrong.
Absolutely. Because there are enough people out there doing whatever that thing is. When you look left and you look right and see it happening elsewhere and you look at it and go, oh, that's how I should do it. Why? Because it worked for them. But now you're just a follower and you're not really you're offering diluted content. And if it's inauthentic, you're going to have such a hard time sustaining that.
Yeah, your identity is kind of just washed because everybody else looks the same. You're saying the same message, and that happens. It's good to look at competitors, but look at competitors and see what the gap is. I think that's one thing that we need to look at is that when we look at competitors or see what everybody else is doing, is don't try to mimic them. See where the gaps are. See what value that they're providing and how can we assist that or even help that. I think that's a good way for us to look at it. So brand marketing, I think, is the third pillar that I want us to kind of talk about where it's really important. And I think a lot of us sometimes shoot and spray when we talk about brand marketing. For me, the way I look at it is getting your brand or getting your content in front of the right audience. And not only doing that is to have different flavors of content marketing, right? You could have social media, audio, podcasts, video has now really ringed up more than it has ever than it ever has before, especially with short videos. One thing that I'm trying to experiment is doing live streaming, getting on front of the camera and saying, hello, everyone, my name is Creative. And in today's live stream, we're going to be talking about this. But what it's doing, it's adding more credibility because people get to see who I am. They're able to connect with the person that's talking about the product or the service, or being able to provide thought leadership. Key word here today, guys, thought leadership around brand marketing. I think those are some things to think about. Kaylan, what are your thoughts more on growing brand marketing?
Yeah, I think you hit it. I think the point that I'd love to expand on here is getting in front of the right audience, right? It's figuring out who you resonate with. I think getting in front of the camera, live streaming is so important. It is really, really engaging. People love to understand who they're talking to. They find a way, to connect with you. And if they do, once they do, they're in, because you're a human. You've humanized yourself, you've humanized the brand. And I think the way that individual creators, we also went through the last 2 years or 18 to 24 months of having cartoon PFPs for almost everybody on Twitter. If you were in like Web3 at all, that was the big thing. And, you come to identify that with a brand, sure. But then once the market shakes, who the person is behind that. And so I think it's a very destabilizing force for some, brands themselves. So you have to think about, like, who is it that I'm looking to connect with? Having like a Bored Ape PFP while the market was hot was actually a giant indicator of trust. Like, a whole community felt like they resonated with you immediately. And if you had a human PFP, they wouldn't know they couldn't tell you from Joe next door. So it has its pros and cons, but being in the right mix and figuring out, well, what am I doing, and what is my voice attempting to deliver, and what is the medium that will resonate with my people? Streaming doesn't work for everyone, but you, who has, confidence and a presence and a lot to say, you want to be a thought leader in various capacities. That's beautiful for you. Pepsi doing live streaming doesn't work in the same way, right? Them doing, like, picking one person out of a multi-thousand person conglomerate doesn't exactly land the same way, and it doesn't get people to buy into the brand itself. It's just like, okay, cool, there's a human back here who cares or gets paid a lot. So I think you have to be thoughtful as well about who is my audience? Have I found them yet, or am I still trying new things to figure out who my audience truly is and what resonates with both me and them collectively? And then where do I find them? Meet people where they are. My co-founder at MAGNETIQ, Tyler, was a Twitch streamer for a long time, and like, that has a very specific audience, and it is a way that people get familiar with connecting and building relationships with people they may never meet, in real life. But if you are a creator who is looking to work with, high security brands on, government level agencies or whatever it is, right? If that's your thing, then maybe being out there in the public isn't. Zach XDT shouldn't be out in the public showing his face all the time, right? You just have to be thoughtful about it and see, does this work? Because what works for you will not work for someone else. It may not suit their personality and or their brand. So that's just I know that's a sort of fluid answer, but it really is about finding what's going to resonate with the people who you want to communicate with the most.
And then once you figure that out, you got to figure out how to say that same message 50 different ways.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
And one thing about marketing, and I've done a couple classes, and I've had people come up to me, they're like, hey, Creative, I created this awesome thread, I created this graphic, and it hit, but I didn't get any sales, or I didn't get any tractions, I didn't get any followers. And I asked them, well, how many times did you do it?
Mm-hmm. Classic, for sure.
I did it for 1 week, right? This isn't a 1 week challenge. Marketing and branding is a journey.
Oh yeah, entire narrative. People want to have something to trust, and that's this, we want to accompany you along the journey, and we don't immediately trust you. We need to witness who you are and what you're about. You can't sort of like come out of the woodwork, drop a couple gems, no matter how brilliant they are, people may love the tweet, they may retweet the tweet, or repost the post, excuse me, on X. They may engage with it because it was a great gem, but they still know nothing about you, and they haven't seen a cadence or consistency. Consistency is ridiculously important in a way that I know frustrates many, many creators. It's like you have to take thousands of at bats before, consistency does accumulate, and you never know exactly when it will hit, but you do need that behind you before people actually look at you like a brand, a thought leader, or, a three-dimensional human.
And the more you market, the more you establish yourself, the more you actually really grow your brand. So if you're someone that's an attorney, a trial lawyer that talks about Web3 all day, that's constantly providing thought leadership blog articles on LinkedIn, and your name is Mitch Jackson, and you're constantly providing content, when someone in my community asks for that type of solution, who do you think I'm going to refer to 10 out of 10?
Absolutely.
Right. And in this world, I think this is something I've learned when I started getting more into my 30s, is it's really about your network. Right. So when I'm thinking about Revel cards, I'm thinking about Dream. Right. When I'm thinking about Magic Eden, I'm probably thinking about Big Nil. When I'm thinking about women in tech and technology, I'm thinking about Vance, I'm thinking about Maria, and I'm thinking about content creators,
Yep.
right? And if I'm thinking about who are people in this industry that are doing it, I look at the consistency, and that's for me, that meter of brand. And every single time they post or talk about what their thoughts are, thought leadership or their insights, that meter goes up just a little bit higher.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason
Just a
it's
little
called
bit higher.
building your brand and not declaring your brand. If it just took one tweet or one gem of a position or a hot take, then everybody would be a brand. But it's building for a reason, because it does take time, and it takes building trust along the way.
Man, okay, so we've talked about the three pillars and brand strategy, brand identity, and brand marketing. And I think to really help you keep on track for 2024 is I love affirmations. I'm a big affirmation guys. Maybe create a vision board of what you want your brand to look like, and keep it near your desk. Maybe make it as an image as your screensaver. Use AI, whatever you want, and create a vision board of what you want your brand to look like in 2024. Having that visualization and looking at that daily, it's going to give you that dopamine, and it's going to excite you every single day of what you're striving for or what you want to get out of yourself or your product or your service. So I think that's one of the things that I want you guys to do into 2024 is to take kind of the three pillars that we talked about, create a vision board of what you want to be. Do you want to be an awesome speaker and crush it in the crowds? Do you want to be the top artist in this industry? Do you want to take your NFT brand at a certain level? Do you want to take your entrepreneurship at this level? It all starts with visualization. And I think creating that vision board, I think is going to help support that. I want to jump into our next topic, which is going to be actionable steps. And then I'm going to invite, I've got Neil, I've got some other great speakers up here that I'm going to invite for them to give us their take on how to grow your brand in 2024. But I want to welcome everybody to the new Mastermind Owls podcast, where we help entrepreneurs, digital content creators grow their online presence and their business. I'm your host, Creative, and in this episode, we're diving into how to grow your brand in 2024. Join us today as we explore tactics, emerging trends, and critical insights to help your brand thrive for this upcoming year. So let's dive into the actionable steps. So here's some actionable things that I want you guys to start thinking about for 2024. I'll kind of go through these kind of quickly. I think what we talked about earlier with the three pillars are really going to help resonate when we talked about brand strategy, brand identity, and brand marketing. But here's some actionable steps for you to take into 2024. First one is build to connect. Make sure that you're building content, you're building value, you're creating stories that are connecting with your target audience. I think this is probably one of the most powerful things that you can do to really grow your brand. I know I myself have been slacking on this, but I'm really going to be focusing in to take initiative to just focus on what my target audience is, what I'm doing, and to deliver that as much as possible. Second part is to know your why. Why am I in this space? What is the value that I'm trying to provide to people? If someone were to listen to me or listen to someone else, why is that? Right? So start thinking about that and start thinking about the actionable steps to understand your why. The next one is make sure you have a really strong brand and vision. And I know this is like ABC 1, 2, 3, but this is the perfect time in the new year to kind of rewrite your mission. Why should people follow me? Why am I doing this? So when you are creating content, you always know to fall back on what's going to matter to you and to keep your brand alive and growing in the right direction. The next one is understanding your market. Man, oh man, oh man, oh man. Understand who you're talking to. Understand the generation, understand their lingo, understand their community, and understand what are they into. So if you can tie your brand into what they're into, help provide value, provide thought leadership, anything around that is really going to amplify your brand heading into 2024. Staying in topic trends of what people are talking about and providing your niche and your own thought about it in an uplift positive way is going to help others. And the other one is brand positioning. Be there at the right time. Get your ads in the right place. Know when to post, when not to post, and be consistent with it. I think those are really big things where people, you'll see people or brands really stand out from others of their positioning of where they are, what space that they're in, how they're using LinkedIn, how they're using YouTube, how they're using live stream, how they are positioning themselves to be a well-known brand in this new digital realm of 2024. So those are my actionable steps to head into 2024. Kaylan, I'm going to turn it over to you. Is there some one of these that stood out you the most before we listen to some of our experts that come up?
I mean, I think we addressed most of them early on, but I would love to just take the position that stringing authenticity throughout each of those, you know, tactical steps is super, super critical. There are absolutely algorithmic supports for posting at certain times, but if you are a night owl, stick with it. And the people that are up when you are up are going to be around, and you can repost, another time 12 hours later, do an automatic repost. I think getting into some of the traps of, just looking at what works best is a difficult balance, as we were just talking about. What works for everyone else shouldn't be what you adopt. And so, you've got to sort of navigate, and I would love to hear from, sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Say it again.
Yeah, so I want to weave authenticity into it, and I would love to hear, like, the folks who are coming up onto the panel. How do you integrate? Yes, there are best practices. Yes, there are things that you can do to optimize, but how do you also balance that with staying true to, as we were talking about earlier, your very particular and specific brand?
I want to welcome Big Neil, one of the partners at Deturians, also a business, I don't know how this, business consultant for Magic Eden, a good friend of mine who has been in this space for about 2 years, has been rocking and rolling, and he has been doing such an amazing job building his brand with thought leadership. So Neil, welcome to the stage. We'd love to get your input on what are some ways people could do to uplift their brand to grow in 2024.
Absolutely creative. And I just want to appreciate the topic that you brought up and always hosting fantastic rooms. And I think like diversifying is one of those biggest things that you do really well. It's the live streaming, it's the podcasting, it's the spaces, it's making sure that you have good content out there and you're providing value long term for our people who want to educate themselves, right? Like that's like the biggest portion of success that you've had, and it's how we originally connected. You were hosting the Mega Creative Show, and I was just a young, not Web3 native marketer, and I learned a lot, right, in those stages. So that's been consistency for you. Kind of just how Kaylan said that, and I also want to give a bunch of love to Kaylan. I've just hearing your insights here today, and I've connected with the Colony team a number of times. Like excellent team across the board. So just really excited to connect with you and meet you and learn more about what everyone's doing out here. But from my perspective, we touched on it a little bit while you all were having the initial conversation, and it's in that like the way that I found it worked the best is in that authenticity realm, right? Like how can you speak to people and make sure that you're building a like really authentic relationship with them, right? And from my experience, the best way I've done that is through one-on-one calls, right? Furthermore, past just like doing a casual space and coming up and having a conversation, being like, "Oh my gosh, like you're so fantastic. I love your project. I love this. I love that." That's fine. But when you have like a 30 minutes, like an hour set time with a person on a one-to-one basis, that can really set the stage for how your connection continues to move forward, right? And now I've had that eye-to-eye connection with you. Now I've had that verbal, like, here's your background, here's my background, here's what passions and what we share in this space, and how can we grow, connect, and really thrive together as we move forward here. So my entire goal, and like Smokey and some of the team over at Polygon have really emphasized this. My entire goal in this space is to onboard people effectively, whether that's into blockchain, and I educate my non-native friends who haven't dove into this technology yet, or it's into Polygon directly in the ecosystem that I operate primarily in. Every single time they say onboarding is a one-to-one conversation. So any single time that somebody tweets out something or posts out something about interest on Polygon, anytime that any of my friends are like, "Yo, no, like, are you still, you still diving into crypto? Like, what are you doing over there?" I instantly say like, "Yo, like, let's just chat. Let's set up a meeting. Let's grab a beer. Let's grab some coffee. Let's jump on a Zoom. Let's have a discussion about it." And that always leads to them understanding that this is something I value on a peer-to-peer basis, right? One person connecting with one person, and then it focuses onto how you brand yourself and how you continue to grow and how you can share in those values. So that's what's been working really well for me overall, and people resonate with that because it makes a real relationship with people out here. So I appreciate that conversation point, and really excited to hear from others.
Absolutely. Being yourself available, being authentic. Now, if you could go back in your very first, when you first started, what would be the one advice you would give to yourself?
Oh man, don't lose yourself. The one thing I spoke, and I was honored to be a part of the Omega meeting, which is hosted by the Matic Man, Tony. Everyone should know the Matic Man if you're in Polygon. He runs the crypto crew and the crew community. Really successful project over here. And so he invited me on the Omega meeting, which is like the essentially educational conference that they host for certain holders, right? There was like 40, 50 people in the room. We had a big discussion, and the one thing that I said I regretted is that I became, in my first entire year, I became Datorians, right? Which is my project that me and my team founded. Like I was Datorians. I would go on spaces. I would co-host from Datorians. People called me Datorians. Like everybody didn't know who Nil was, right? And so when you're so focused on only doing one thing, right? When you're so focused on minting or sales or making sure that you're presented very well, you limit yourself, right? I found myself in conversations and I wasn't able to express myself fully because I was too worried about it leaving a bad impression on what Tutorians is building, right? Which is like a family fun brand. It's kid friendly. We're building like real world activations and really geared towards the youth and parents, right? So I wasn't able to speak on topics that weren't in that direction. But then as soon as I became nil, like as soon as I locked into who I was, and really, I started like last year doing this a lot. I had like 500 followers on this account. The last year, I've put effort into just being nil, and it's opened up a plethora of doors for me. Right, opportunities with Magic Eden, opportunities like assisting other people grow and host spaces for them. And so the one thing I really encourage everyone to do, yes, establish a really strong professional brand. If you're founding a project, if you're starting a business, whatever it may be, but also establish a really strong personal brand too, because if you just establish that professional side of it, you're going to see yourself lock into one type of like communication style, and it's going to limit your expression and your ability to connect with people in that authentic way that I kind of spoke on.
Kaylan, have you ever lost yourself supporting someone else's brand or organization that you lost yourself? I
Uh,
feel like it happens a lot. It happened to me, so I was wondering if it's happened to you before.
it hasn't yet. I have probably an almost unpalatably strong personal conviction, and that cuts both ways. But that's part of my brand, right? Which is love it or leave it. And so anything that I've done with and for other brands is because of who I have, built myself up to be organically. but I do see it happen a lot, and it is really common. It's not, it's not that I'm just some superhero. It's I think that I'm, pretty acerbic, and nobody would ask me to, to toe their company line unless it was fully aligned already. So, but it is very easy to happen, especially when you want to be supportive. And somebody, I just want to circle back because somebody did comment earlier that I didn't get to or see while we were speaking on it. But how does it work if you're not docs, if you refuse to docs? Your brand is your brand, and if you want the company to be your brand, or you want your alter ego to be your brand, that is fine. You just have to be able to really authentically support it. You have to become it, and it can't be an act, right? When you realize there's a little bit of tension or conflict between the brand and your authentic self, it's not necessarily that one is not truer than the other. It's just it's going to be so difficult to maintain that facade, or that, like we were talking about earlier. It's going to be so much harder to keep things running smoothly, for yourself. So, my advice on that topic is really find it first, act on it next, and then it'll be smoother sailing.
And that's something I've been dealing with, and it's something Mitch Jackson brought out at the Creative Talk, where sometimes the brands they see the digital avatar, but they want to know who Eric is. They want to know who he is, what his background is, and sometimes those conversations are going to be needed, because those are the conversations that allow me to network and have more opportunities. And I'm like half docs, half not. I'm like the in between, just because of who I am and what I do, and I want to keep privacy. But sometimes you're going to have to step out of your circle, do things uncomfortable, because sometimes businesses really want to deal with that person. They don't want to deal with the creative house. They want to just deal with Eric. So it really ties in of what my brand is, right? So I'm like in the mix of trying to figure that out as a content creator, as a thought leader in the space of what is that balance. But that's for a different discussion. Great talking points, Neil. And yeah, this is going to get a really good conversation. I do want to turn it over to Maria. Maria, welcome to the Mastermind Owls podcast. As we are talking about how to grow your brand, what is your take of how do you grow your brand heading into 2024?
Hey guys, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I think I will agree with everything that has been said. I think it's really important to keep loyal to yourself and just don't try to play any persona, any role, because we realize that will end up, everyone will realize which is your true self. So there is no point to try to play any role. I've been always myself since the beginning. I've been always open, really accessible for everyone. If, someone have issues or they want to jump into the NFT, I'm always trying to show myself as an example, because I jump into the NFT space without knowing anyone, right? So it is like, yes, you can do it as well. So I will say that I think it's really important to be loyal, which are your values and yourself. I agree on what Kaylan said. Like at the end, even though maybe you are just pointed out a really niche section of the entire space, I truly believe that at the end your audience will find you, and you really want rather to have a small audience, but the ones that really resonate, like trust your vision, rather than trying to onboard everyone, right? So that will be my takes.
Fantastic take. Kaylan, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think I agree with Maria. Yeah, in the end, that's what matters, is resonating and finding your true people. And then, although it may take a little bit longer, it's worth the work. And yeah, that's the long and the short of it, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Is to be genuine and just focus on one, gaining that right target audience member. I'd rather have one loyal brand customer or someone to follow me, instead of having 10 fake people that they're not really in it, right? And over time, you'll see that scale as long as you're being consistent. And I think that's what it really comes down to, is the consistency with the branding that we've talked about. I want to turn it over to, go ahead, Kaylan.
Yeah, I just wanted to say on that, and we touched on it almost before about, copying or a playbook of influencers who are bigger than you and saying, okay, this is how to grow followers, this is how to grow followers, and you do exactly what they do, which is sort of a diluted version of them. But I also think it's very important to figure out why. Why do you want people to follow you? Like, for what? It's a vanity metric. And by and large, people want followers, but what is it that you have to say? If you haven't done the work to figure out what your voice really is or what your worldview is that you want people to get on board for, why the vanity metric, right? And I think we see that you see people sort of like evolving their ethos and their perspective and their point of view as they grow in follower count, but then nobody really knows what to expect, and they're sort of like, you used to be this, you used to be that, and it's like, well, yeah, often enough you were copying a playbook that now doesn't feel authentic. You have to reach for different content, and maybe you go deeper inside and get a little bit more organic about it, but that's not the audience you built off the back of somebody else's audience. So now the people who are here aren't sure what they're seeing or don't understand where to place you anymore. So that's more of a cautionary tale, but it ties into sort of taking the time early on to hone in on who you are and who you want to connect with before actually going out and trying to mimic these playbooks or build up a vanity metric.
Love that. Well said. We're going to have to clip that one. That was fantastic. I want to turn the mic over to Crookshank. Welcome to the Mastermind Owls podcast. I've heard you in spaces. You have a lot of thought leadership when it comes to marketing, sales, and understanding brand. Love to get your intake. What are some ways that you're looking to grow your brand into 2024?
Now, this has been a fantastic discussion because it's making me, kind of look at things and kind of go, man, there's a lot of improvements that I can make in what I do. And see, part of my problem is just, I think you need to identify what weaknesses that you have. And so, like, for example, for me, my weakness is I'm a person who really likes to get approval from others, and I have a really hard time saying no. I mean, just a very hard time saying no. So for example, there for me, I support a lot of projects, and then it's hard to sit there because if when people see that you support a project and then you're not promoting that project, it's just kind of like, well, hey, aren't you supposed to be promoting my project? And it's just like, oh, I mean, I don't get paid to promote anyone's project, but sure, I'll sit there and send a tweet, or I'll post something about something that your project is doing, and then it's hard because then if you don't promote that project or say something about that project, then people sit there and say, well, God, if you're not going to say something about my project, then I'm not going to say anything about your project. And then at the end of the day, they got to look at it and kind of go, well, because really for me, I'm a co-founder in a project, but that's just because I was elevated from a community member, and they said, hey, we really like what you do in a community. So, I mean, for me, like I said, I promote so many different projects in a way where I'm supportive, but I think sometimes that hurts my identity because people are probably confused as to, well, what is he really doing? Where is he really at? What does he align himself to? So for me, I probably need to take a step back and sit there and say, okay, hey, going forward, what can I do to better establish my brand and to be a thought leader, as opposed to, hey, I'm going to take a bunch of spaghetti, throw it on the wall, and just see what sticks. So, I mean, I think that there's just some soul searching that everyone can kind of do to really establish who they want to be and how they can better themselves for the upcoming year.
Looks like my job here is done, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just kidding. I think that's what it's about. I think that's why we're doing this podcast, is to help entrepreneurs and content creators like yourself or others that are listening, is how do I really scale myself? But how do I scale myself in going into the right direction? You bring a lot of value, right? But you're bringing a lot of value to like 5 different paths. And if you were to take all those and put it just in one path, you'll be able to go faster, you'll be able to go longer, and you'll be able to connect with more people along the way. You've got the voice for it. It's time to get your ducks in the row and maybe data-driven decisions. Look at your analytics, look at your community members and say, okay, what's giving me the best return on investment? If you're spending this amount of time on social media and you're helping this brand, well, what is that return on investment by helping that brand? And start eliminating the ones that are not giving you the best return on investment. And for you, I mean, it's kind of sky's the limit. You've got the voice, you got the attitude, and you really got it in yourself to do it.
Yeah, I think probably a question that would be interesting is because I think what's happened is sometimes you just get involved in a lot of different projects because the hope is, that hey, I'm inside of your project as well. And it's not that you're trying to, quote unquote, recruit people away from a project, but what you want to try and do is get, more eyes onto other projects. I mean, I think when you sit there and put all of your eggs into one basket, I mean, I think then that there's going to be, I don't think that's ever a good thing. And so part of me spreading myself so thin is, hey, I want other communities to kind of see that there's so many good things that are out there. You don't necessarily need to spend all of your time in one specific project, but get out there and see what's out there because you might be in a project where your skill set might work better in another project. And so I think that's something that I've attempted to do, but maybe I'm failing at doing it because, I think that there's, again, there could be some confusion or there could be some resentment. I know that, because I'll linger in and get into a lot of different discords. And I mean, I can see what people say about, me at times because people will just say stuff and they don't realize that, hey, well, I'm right here. You don't need, if you have a problem with me, you can come directly to me and say that. But yeah, it's just interesting because at the end of the day, all I'm trying to do is provide as many eyes on as many projects as possible. And you know what? You're just not going to please everybody. And some people are just, they just have a negative mindset regardless. And so I just got to be okay with people not liking me sometimes, especially when all I'm trying to do is just give my best with whatever I do.
Oh man, I feel you on that. Maybe we'll do a show of how to ignore the haters, and how to keep building and stay focused. Because I think that's something that can really stop a lot of the momentum of how you're building. If you get a negative input or someone says something about you, and you could be sensitive, right? And it could affect how your production, your productivity. Um, but I'm letting you know what you're doing is fantastic. I look at you as a thought leader in the space. I'm really happy that you came here today, and you got something out of today. If there's anything that we talked about, if you got something in this space that you learned something and you're going to take it actionable, that's a big dub for me and anybody here that's listening here.
Oh no, I definitely did. And like I said, first thing I'm going to do when I get off after I will have to get off because I got some hospital calls that I got to get to, talking about spreading yourself thin. But I will, sit there and identify a few certain things. And then what I'll do is I'm just going to connect with you individually and just share some stuff just because I really love what you're doing, how you're doing it. I think that, the space that you did, where you were doing some mutations, I thought was super cool. So yeah, I'll connect with you on an individual basis. But again, I really appreciate the invite and the opportunity just to kind of listen to Big Neil and to Maria and certain people on here and especially you and your co-host Kaylan. You guys have just been really good with what you guys have shared. So really appreciate that. So thanks.
Yeah, thanks for being up here, Kaylan. You're the rock star. Man, I'm happy we connected, and you said yes to today. You've really helped drive this conversation and bring a different insights and different perspective, and that's what we're trying to do on this podcast. And I'm really thankful that you're here today. Is there anything you want to say to Crookshank before I go to Vanessa?
No, yes, I think you're amazingly self-aware. I would never, you know, I don't have a position on what you particularly support versus what you don't. And the sheer fact that you can look at it and say, you know what, maybe this is a little too transactional, or maybe this is tit for tat, and it's not the most, useful expenditure of my time, or it's wasting a little bit of energy or goodwill when people are expecting things from you. I think that's an amazing thing to be able to step back and look. And I think that we could all use a dose of zooming out as we go into 2024. Again, it's not about the calendar year, but it is a nice arbitrary marker. It's a nice symbol of, taking a pause and seeing what's working. What do you want to keep doing in the coming year? And what do you maybe need to get rid of? So, very cool. And I appreciate your incredible self awareness. And it's really awesome listening to you. I think you're a super genuine guy. So, I appreciate all your contributions.
Yeah, and thanks. And I apologize. I do have to step out, but thank you so much for the
Go
invite. And
save
again,
lives.
that was yeah. Thank you very much. Take care, guys.
Thank you.
Thank
I want
you.
to turn it over to Vanessa Vance. Welcome to the Mastermind Alex podcast show. Love to get your intake of how you're going to be growing your brand in 2024.
Hey everyone. Thank you so much again, Owls, for the invite. Wow, amazing speakers here. And you guys cover a lot of things that I want to do for the next year. And I've always, since every show that Eric has done, I have learned, I have tried to use it and trying to improve, here in Web3. And everything has been helpful. A lot of great topics today were a reminder, that I needed to add to my list. But some of the goals, like for me to go to grow my brand for next year, like I the first plan is to build a stronger online presence. I know sometimes I am here active. A lot of people know that they can find me on DMs, right? But I do have a new audience and new collectors, new people following me. So I guess like trying to reintroduce myself for those new people that are coming in, build like new relationship, reach out. Not only that, but also to try to provide more valuable content for my audience. A lot of people that have been following me almost a little bit too over in the NFT space know that I am big supporting women in tech. I am big in mental health. I am big in, online metaverse events. But I guess I need to like create more content and to see how ways I can help others. And also I want to stay in, you know, lead by example. I'm a person that I'm a big in mental health, but sometimes, like even we stay a lot of time here. So even just taking time for myself, like that helps me prevent burnout, right? That can help me go back, be refreshed and come back and be able like to, you know, create more contact, get back to everything that I'm doing. And well, something that is important is being able to like set boundaries and say no. Sometimes we get excited. A lot of opportunities in this space, a lot of new technology, whether you're an artist, you have marketplaces, you have all these new things. Set a boundary. Learn how to say no. Sometimes you're invited to test out a lot of projects and it requires your time, requires your feedback, or even when people want to do collaborations with you, like sometimes learn how to say no and identify when those things are not going with with I guess your goals, your mission. In the past, I kind of like, hey, I kind of spent my time trying to build relationships because I was into like mental health and bringing the awareness. But sometimes I will look for the focus of what mental health meant. And even when somebody will say, oh yeah, we're here to support health, health is something and it's a wide topic. And for me, like, I think it takes a lot of energy. So to be here in this space, you need to be mentally and physically well just to like give your best. So what else? What else? um, just trying to like I said, stay present on social media or whatever Bollywood content that you're provided. Try to ensure that you also send in that message across the other platforms that you have. Don't forget that we don't only have X here. We have also Instagram, so LinkedIn, all these amazing other platforms that you can outreach. And what I want to say is I think, yeah, I think I covered that a lot. try to engage with your audience, try to build long-term relationships and meaningful relationships. Like you said, owls, like, you rather have that small group that is can be loyal to you than the big people out there. And when you're not around, like, those people are able to follow you. They're able to speak for you. They know what you're about because they know you, and you build that trust. And something besides that, it's not like my community that helps me with that, but also recently I made my own website. So something that I learned, I guess, from day one from Creative Owls: have your website, when you're sleeping, right? Have a place that people can go check it out, who you are. If you're a creative, you're an artist, they can learn more about you, your experiences. So those are the things that, yeah, I've been trying to do this year, but just trying to even like improve, I guess, next year.
That is fantastic. Kayla, anything you want to add? I know there's a lot in there.
I think, it's just an awesome thing to touch on mental health. I think that's just that should be a banner in the sky that, under or overlines all of this, is that making sure that you aren't, killing yourself in the process of trying to satisfy this digital machine. The internet never sleeps. And so many of us who are, emerging digital natives, I'm too old to be called a digital native, but, getting there and living and breathing in this space, it can be exhausting. And so, not only taking time for yourself, I call it the sharpening of the axe, where you rest and recharge and play, right? You can keep hacking away at a tree, but you're going to dull the blade. And all of a sudden, you'll find that you're completely inefficient at what you're doing. You're wasting time and energy. And if you just stepped back and took the time to sharpen the axe or recharge your own body, you come back 10 times more efficient and effective, with more creativity, with more nuance, with sharpness. So I think those were really great points to add to the conversation. So thank you so much for that.
Maria, go ahead.
Yes, just wanted to say thank you to Vanessa to, remind us about boundaries, because I think it's really important to set some boundaries here in the space. While Crocs was speaking, I was, like, okay, I can really relate to what he was saying, because it happened as well to myself. Like, it's really hard for me to say no to others. I'm always trying to help everyone. I'm always rooting for everyone. I'm not always that pay well back to me, So it's something that I've been working on as well. Be sure that I put my boundaries. I'm not trying to reach away the limits of myself, because I think it's really important to remind that you cannot help others if you're not taking care of yourself first. So just wanted to add that. Really thank you for the reminder.
Yeah, Vans, one thing I would say is make sure you write everything down. You have a lot of ideas. You pump out a lot of content. But I think moving strategically is going to be the best return on investment, because you're doing a lot, with a lot of supporting a lot of other people in that. And for me, as a friend, as a content creator, as a partner with you, I think really identifying what's going to give you the best return on investment, and what's not. And I think you're doing that already this year. And I think a lot of us are doing that this year, is saying no to certain things that don't make sense, or doing it a different way into 2024, where maybe it could be less stressful, or a better way to actually grow your brand. And I think that's where, I personally see that you're going to have the biggest growth within your brand by, like you said, saying no and just being more selective of how you put your time and effort. I personally would like to thank everybody for coming to today's show. You know, I've been away from doing podcasts and educational for about almost about a year. 2021 came off and 2022 came off, and I completely did so well in this space of educating, helping people, in bringing my brand, which is really thought leadership, helping people connect, bringing people a different perspective, storytelling. And my goal is to continue doing this in a cadence that's going to work for me, that's going to work for you guys. Doing it every single day or every other day, it's just not going to work for me. So the way that we're going to do this podcast show is going to be recorded. We're going to have it on other social media platforms. We're going to do this every other week on a Thursday from 2 to 3 p.m. And we're just going to provide thought leadership. And some of the topics that I'm going to tell you guys that what we're going to cover is um, how to market your brand next, how to leverage your social media, how to boost your productivity and focus, the secrets to getting better every single day, and how to network on social media. So these are some of the topics that I'm going to be diving into for the first quarter of 2024. I said to myself, I wanted to not only get back my mojo, but I don't want to wait till 2024. I'm going to do it now. And that's why I decided to go ahead and take the initiative and kick it off with this new podcast. And the only thing I do here is provide educational content and really try to uplift and help others along the way. So feel free to send me a DM. Go to my website at creativeowls.io/contacts. Make sure that you are following my co-host here. And again, we're here to help entrepreneurs and digital content creators grow within their online presence and inside their business. I know we covered of how to grow your brand in 2024. So I want everybody to understand this. Branding or growth is a consistent journey. Implementing these strategies, staying aligned, and adapting to the changing landscape is really going to be key for you guys to be successful in your brand heading into 2024. There's no right or wrong way of how to brand yourself. There's obviously best practices that we talked about today that's really going to help you as you move forward. So thank you guys for being here. Don't forget to share the space out. I want to give it, I call it my safe round, if you guys know, where I ask all my speakers to do their safe round. Is there anything that we missed? Is there anything that they want to add to today's show before we leave? I want to go to Maria first. And once I'm done with that, I'm going to give you guys my last secret or tool tip that I'm going to be using for 2024 to grow my brand. So just stay with us. So Maria, uh, final thoughts, safe round from you. Anything you want to add?
I just wanted to say that I really love that you mentioned as well vision boards. I'm gonna do my first one this year, and I think it's really important to have some time to reflect, to stop, move away, and actually think about what you want to do, where you are right now, and what are you missing. I think being self-aware is key for you to succeed. So I will add that. And obviously, thank you so much for this space. I already bookmarked it to listen again because I think it's been amazing.
Yes, and if you guys go ahead and just turn on your notifications, I will be putting out my entire agenda. I will be putting the agenda on my website, and all my co-hosts that I bring up here, also going to be highlighting them on my website, bringing SEO back to their brand and helping them along the way. And if you want to be a speaker, if you want to be a thought leader, just reach out to me. Where if you want to have a topic and you want to help cover, I think that's how we really grow in this space. And I also want to give the opportunity to other leaders that are growing, and maybe you've never hosted a space before and you want to come up here. This is the perfect opportunity to learn or do so, and we have definitely the room and the opportunity for you here today. And guys, again, if you guys did learn something from today's conversation around brand identity marketing, let me know in the comments what your thoughts were on today's show. Did we kick ass? Did you learn something, or did we completely suck? Do we need to kind of start over? Please, the feedback is what we're looking for. That's going to help us understand where we're heading towards. It's going to help our branding, and it's going to get more people to know what we're going to be talking about here in the future. I want to turn it over to Vance to give us her safe round for here today.
All right. Thank you so much for mentioning the vision board. I'm super big on that. But don't forget to write your New Year's resolution, kind of equals to that, just to start the year on the, the right feet. And then also, I want to say always communicate. Communicate with your community, the people around you, whether you're taking breaks, whatever you need to do, communicate, right? I know that sometimes people that get discouraged where the market is not doing so well, they take breaks and they just go missing, but they don't say nothing. If you need to do that, at least like communicate to your community, hey, I'm taking this much of time And then when you're back, hey, I'm back. So I think that's very important, just to keep that image, right? To keep your brand, keep going. It's always important to communicate, whether good or bad news. So have a great, happy New Year's, everyone.
Thank you, Van, so much for being here. One of my favorite people in Web3 and IRL, collaborating with you. Really, really proud and of your success as a content creator, as a mother, as a parent, and where you started and where you're going, and seeing your journey has been amazing. And thanks for still being here, and supporting and helping us grow together. I think that's what it's all about when we're looking to connect and make meaningful relationships. I want to turn it over to my guy Big Neil, who's been here pretty much the whole time. I know this is his jam around marketing communications, and love to kind of get your final thoughts. Is there anything that we missed that you want to talk about or bring up? This is your time to do it.
No, appreciate it, creative. I love a good safe round, as you've always had. But no, I think a lot of great topics today. I think it handled a good, well-rounded conversation around the branding and the marketing differences and all the pillars that were involved here. One thing I've just been encouraging our people to do this last few months is like, if you have a thought, like, I understand that you want to like refine it, right? I understand if you want to jump into spaces hosting, if you want to jump into threads, if you want to jump into video creation, you want to refine it and you want to make that first like thing perfect. I can promise you it's not going to be perfect, right? So just jump in, right? Commit to something and actually execute, and make sure that you have a like, yes, you want to have a vision, you want to have a goal in mind when you do these things, but don't resist, because the more that you do something, the more that you're going to get confidence within it, and the more that you're going to get feedback from it, right? So you can refine your process in the most organic way possible, which is actually engaging with our community out here. So if you're thinking about jumping into a new area of content creation, if you're thinking about diving in deeper, just take that first leap, right? And if the 2024 switch is that first leap for you, perfect. Start off 2024 on the right foot, and just let it rip. Don't hold back ever again.
Clipping that one. Absolutely well said. Kaylan, man, love. I just want to say thank you so much for co-hosting today. Uh, I know I hit you up last minute, but you're so agile and you brought so much leadership to today's space. I think everyone here got to know you a little bit more. I know I did, and I just want to say thank you so much for being my first like co-host, my first guest on the podcast. I'm really looking forward to chopping this up, creating some more visual content. I want to turn it over to you to give us your final thoughts, your last saying here today.
Thank you so much. A huge thank you is what I want to say. This has been awesome. It's been a really riveting conversation, super engaging, and I genuinely enjoyed it. Big Neil, I'm going to follow on your, what I was going to close out with was practice, take chances, and trust your answer. So I really love the take chances. I'm a big proponent of done is better than perfect. You've got to get your reps in. So just start. There's no time like the present, and you will get better. The last thing I'll say is ask for help. People want to help. It can be scary and showcases you. People think it shows their lack of knowledge, but what I think it really shows is your curiosity and your willingness to learn. And that makes people really excited to share their knowledge with you and help you out. And you'll probably get an awful lot more than you asked for. So reach out to me. I'm sure Creative is always open for this as well. Reach out to people for help. Ask the question. You might be really surprised with what you get out of it.
For that, we come to a close for 2023. We have new opportunities, new season. With new solutions comes new outcomes, and that's what I'm excited for this upcoming year. I'm so proud of the community. Very, very proud and happy to have these guest speakers come up here. It takes a lot of courage to come up here and provide your thought leadership. So if you were down there in the stands that you're listening, and maybe you were thinking about hitting that come up button or so forth, or if you want to come up, let me know. We can plan to do it. I can give you the right questions, and we can get you in the right, give you the right questions for you to scale and be heard. And I think those are the most things that we want to focus on in the space, to help people people. As always, thank you guys for being here. This has been the Mastermind Owls podcast show. As always, stay creative. Thank you guys, and I'll see you guys soon.